Cowboys Nation, this changes everything. Jerry Jones just dropped a bombshell at training camp that has the entire NFL world buzzing, and you absolutely need to hear what's happening in Dallas right now. We're talking about blockbuster trades, massive moves, and a win-now mentality that could completely reshape this roster before opening day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell because we're bringing you daily Cowboys updates and breaking news you won't find anywhere else. Let's dive into this absolute game-changer happening in Dallas right now. Alright, so here's what went down at the Cowboys training camp press conference, and folks, Jerry Jones was in rare form. The man came out swinging with some statements that have everyone from casual fans to NFL insiders trying to decode exactly what Dallas is planning. And let me tell you, after years of listening to Jerry speak, after becoming completely fluent in what I like to call Jerryisms, I can read between the lines here, and what he's saying is absolutely massive for the direction of this franchise. Jerry essentially stood at that podium and told the world that the Dallas Cowboys are ready to go all in. He made it crystal clear that if the right opportunity presents itself, they are prepared to sacrifice future assets to win right now, this season, in 2024. This isn't just casual talk. This is Jerry Jones putting the entire league on notice that Dallas is hunting for impact players and they're willing to pay the price to get them. Let me break down exactly what Jerry said because the words matter here. He came right out and said, candidly, that he would be very interested in giving up future draft capital to add substantive pieces to this roster right now. He emphasized that he would absolutely invest something substantial to get the right kind of deal that improves this team by opening day. Think about that for a second. The owner of the Dallas Cowboys is publicly announcing that he feels that good about this team, that confident in what they have, that he's ready to mortgage some of the future to capitalize on the present. That's not something you hear every day from NFL owners. Jerry continued by saying that, if they get an opportunity to add to this roster, they are very capable of doing it, and the mood in the organization is to actually pull the trigger if the right situation emerges. Now here's where it gets really specific and really interesting. Jerry didn't just say they want to add talent anywhere. He specifically mentioned defense. He talked about improving their playmaking ability on defense, getting more pressure on the quarterback, and potentially doing something special at the linebacker position. Those are not vague statements. Those are targeted areas where Dallas knows they need to get better, and Jerry is essentially broadcasting to the entire NFL that those positions are where they're shopping. But wait, there's more. Jerry also mentioned that a top pick is expendable this year if it means adding somebody meaningful who can help them right now. Now, let me clarify something important here, because there's been some confusion about what Jerry meant. When he said top pick, I don't necessarily think he's talking exclusively about their first-round selection. A top pick could mean a high second-rounder, or even their best available pick in a given round. It's Jerry speak, and you have to understand the nuances. But make no mistake, Dallas is willing to part with significant draft capital, and that tells you everything you need to know about how they view their championship window. This isn't a rebuilding team stockpiling picks for the future. This is a team that believes they can compete for a Super Bowl right now, and they're ready to act like it. Now here's where the plot thickens even more. Jerry revealed that he had a conversation with another team and another owner about a potential deal. He specifically mentioned talking to an owner, which is significant. That tells us this isn't some low-level exploratory call. This is big game hunting. This is Dallas targeting a franchise-altering player, the kind of guy where the owner would need to be involved in trade discussions. But before everyone gets too excited, Jerry also pumped the brakes a little bit when reporters followed up. When asked if a deal was close to happening, Jerry clarified that there's no forward momentum right now. He described it as a very legitimate discussion, but wouldn't give it a direction or characterize it as being close to completion. His message was simply that he feels good enough about this team to give up future capital if the right opportunity presents itself. So what does all this mean? What's the timeline here? When could we actually see Dallas pull off a blockbuster trade? Here's my read on the situation, and I think this is the most important takeaway from everything Jerry said. First, this probably isn't happening this week. Don't expect an announcement in the next few days. What this sounds like is Dallas putting out feelers, doing their homework, and laying the groundwork for something that could happen later. Maybe it's a couple weeks into training camp when a team has an injury and suddenly needs to make a move. Maybe it's right before the season starts when rosters are being finalized. Or, and I think this is actually the most likely scenario, this could be groundwork for a trade deadline move in October or November. Think about it. Right now, in late July, there just aren't that many teams actively shopping impact players. Most teams are heading into training camp with optimism, believing they can compete. But fast forward 2 months into the season, and some of those teams will be sitting at 1-5 or 1-6, realizing they're not going anywhere, and that's when players become available. That's when Dallas could swoop in, having already done their homework, and execute a deal that changes their season. Remember the Amari Cooper trade back in 2018? That happened during the season, and it completely transformed that Cowboys offense. Could we see something similar on the defensive side of the ball this year? Based on Jerry's comments, it's absolutely possible. But here's what really stands out to me about all of this. The decision-makers in the Dallas Cowboys organization, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, Mike McCarthy, the entire front office, they have legitimate confidence in this roster. They genuinely believe this team can make a deep playoff run and compete for a championship. That confidence is palpable, and it's driving their willingness to be aggressive in the trade market. Think about what that means. After years of playoff disappointment, after consecutive seasons ending earlier than anyone wanted, the Cowboys aren't running it back with the same approach. They're not being complacent, they're looking to add, to improve, to get better. And specifically, they're looking to address the biggest weakness from last season, which was getting after the quarterback and stopping the run. Those linebacker and edge rusher comments from Jerry weren't random. That's where Dallas got exposed last year, and that's where they know they need to improve if they want to actually make noise in January. So let's talk candidates. Who could Dallas actually be targeting? Who are the realistic players that fit the profile of what Jerry is talking about? Let's start with the most obvious name, the one that immediately popped into everyone's mind the second Jerry started talking about edge rushers. Maxx Crosby. If you've been following the Cowboys at all over the past couple of years, you know they have been enamored with the Las Vegas Raiders defensive end. This is a player Dallas has pursued before. In fact, they were heavily involved in trying to trade for Crosby earlier this offseason before he ultimately decided to stay with the Raiders. Jerry was actually asked about Maxx Crosby during the press conference, and his response was fascinating. He made it a point to clarify that they didn't walk away from Maxx Crosby. They understood his injury situation, they thought he could help them, and they were surprised by how the whole thing was resolved. But then Jerry had to pump the brakes because, tampering rules exist, and the Cowboys don't need to be losing draft picks for illegal contact with players under contract. Jerry emphasized that Maxx Crosby is a Raider, he's happy to be a Raider, and they shouldn't even be having hypothetical discussions about him. But come on, we all know what's happening here. Dallas loves Maxx Crosby, they've loved him for a long time. And if the situation changes, if Las Vegas starts the season poorly, if Crosby becomes frustrated, Dallas will be right there ready to pounce. Now, is Maxx Crosby available right now? Probably not. The Raiders aren't shopping him. Crosby himself has expressed commitment to Las Vegas. But football is a business, and situations change rapidly. What if the Raiders start 1-6? What if their rebuild looks worse than expected? What if Crosby starts to reconsider his future with a struggling franchise? That's when Dallas could come calling again, and based on Jerry's comments, they'd be willing to pay a significant price. We're talking potentially a first-round pick, maybe more, plus taking on Crosby's contract. But if Dallas truly believes they're a pass rusher away from being a Super Bowl contender, can you blame them for being willing to pay that price? Maxx Crosby is one of the absolute best defensive players in the entire NFL. He's a relentless pass rusher, a leader, and exactly the kind of game wrecker that could take this Dallas defense from good to elite. If the Cowboys somehow land Maxx Crosby, whether it's now or at the trade deadline, that completely changes the trajectory of this season. Suddenly you're talking about a defensive line that can actually get home against elite quarterbacks. Suddenly you're talking about taking pressure off your secondary. Suddenly you're talking about a defense that can win you playoff games. So what are the chances? Is it likely? I'd say right now, today, the chances are pretty low. But 2 months from now, we'll see. Keep your eyes on this one because it's not going away. Another name that makes a ton of sense is Josh Sweat from the Arizona Cardinals. Now here's a guy who has been in trade rumors recently. The Cardinals are rebuilding. They're not competing for anything meaningful this season. Josh Sweat is a quality edge rusher who could instantly upgrade Dallas's pass rush. He's got ties to the Cowboys coaching staff, having overlapped with defensive line coach Christian Parker in Philadelphia. That familiarity matters, that connection matters. And while the Cardinals have publicly said they're not shopping Sweat, we all know how that goes. Everything's not for sale until the price is right, and if Dallas comes calling with the right offer, Arizona would have to listen. Sweat wouldn't cost as much as Maxx Crosby, probably something in the day 2 pick range, but you'd also have to pay him. He's going to want a new contract, and that complicates things for a Cowboys team that's already tight against the salary cap. Speaking of cap space, that's a real issue Dallas would have to navigate in any trade scenario. They're currently sitting with just over $5 million in cap space, which means acquiring a big-name player would require some creative accounting. They'd need to restructure contracts, create some room, and figure out how to make the money work. It's doable, but it's not simple. Let me throw a dark horse candidate at you that I find really intriguing. Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback for the New England Patriots. Now hear me out on this one. Gonzalez is currently in a contract dispute with New England. He wants to get paid, and the Patriots are playing hardball. He's one of the best young corners in the entire league, and if Dallas could somehow swing a trade for him, that instantly solves so many problems in the secondary. Imagine a cornerback room with Trevon Diggs and Christian Gonzalez as your top two. That's elite. That's championship caliber. Now the complications are obvious. Gonzalez would command a massive contract extension. We're talking Jalen Ramsey type money. Dallas would have to give up significant draft capital, and the Patriots might not even want to trade him, instead choosing to just pay the man and build around him. But if the situation deteriorates, if Gonzalez really wants out, Dallas should absolutely be making calls. This is the kind of move that could elevate the entire defense. What about Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants? Now this one is interesting for multiple reasons. First, the Cowboys absolutely loved Thibodeau coming out of Oregon. He was one of their highest-graded players in that draft class. Second, the Giants are loaded at edge rusher with Brian Burns, Azeez Ojulari, and others, which makes Thibodeau potentially expendable. Third, he's still on his rookie deal, which means you could potentially acquire him without immediately having to pay massive money. You'd be borrowing from the future, using him as a rental for this season and next, and then deciding whether to pay him when his contract is up. Now the obvious complication is that he plays for a division rival. The Giants aren't going to want to trade a talented young player to Dallas. But if New York struggles early, if they're clearly not competing this year, does it make sense for them to hold on to Thibodeau when they could get draft capital back? At the trade deadline, if the Giants are sitting at 2-5, I think Thibodeau should absolutely be available, and Dallas should be all over it. Alex Highsmith from the Pittsburgh Steelers is another name worth monitoring. Pittsburgh has invested heavily in their edge rush with T.J. Watt and Nick Herbig, which could make Highsmith the odd man out. He's productive, he's proven, and he'd be an immediate upgrade for Dallas. The question is whether the Steelers, who are trying to compete right now with Russell Wilson and a retooled offense, would be willing to trade away a key defensive piece. Probably not during training camp, but maybe at the deadline if things aren't going well. Highsmith has dealt with some injury concerns recently, which might lower his trade value a bit, but he's still a quality player who could help this Cowboys defense. Then there's Vita Vea from Tampa Bay. This one is fascinating because Vea has been vocal about wanting a new contract, and the Bucs haven't given it to him yet. He's one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in football, an absolute monster against the run, and someone who could transform Dallas's defensive front. But here's the problem. The money doesn't really work. Dallas already has significant investment in their defensive line with guys like Osa Odigizua and others. Adding Vea's contract on top of that, plus giving him the extension he wants, just doesn't seem financially feasible unless they're willing to make some serious sacrifices elsewhere. It's a fit on the field, but the business side makes it really complicated. And finally, let's talk about Roquan Smith from Baltimore. Now I'll be honest, I don't think he's actually available. The Ravens are trying to win a Super Bowl right now. They just paid Lamar Jackson. They're all in on competing this season. Trading away one of the best linebackers in football doesn't fit that timeline at all. But if we're talking about blockbuster names that fit what Jerry was describing, Roquan Smith absolutely qualifies. He's a tackling machine, a leader, and exactly the kind of special linebacker Jerry mentioned wanting to add. If Baltimore's season goes south, if things fall apart and they decide to retool, Smith is the caliber of player that could be in play. But right now, today, I just don't see it happening. So where does all this leave us? What's the bottom line on Dallas potentially making a blockbuster trade? Here's what I think. Jerry Jones is serious. This isn't just talk. This isn't just Jerry being Jerry and saying things to create headlines. The Cowboys genuinely believe they have a championship caliber roster, and they're willing to be aggressive to capitalize on that window. Will something happen this week? Probably not. Will something happen before the season starts? Maybe. Will something happen at the trade deadline in October or November? I actually think that's the most likely scenario. Dallas is doing their homework right now. They're making calls, gauging interest, figuring out what players might be available and at what price. And when the right opportunity presents itself, when a team falls out of contention and makes a key player available, Dallas will be ready to strike. This is exactly what a championship contender should be doing. You don't sit back and hope things work out. You actively look for ways to improve your roster. You take calculated risks. You push your chips to the middle of the table when you believe you have a real shot. The fact that Jerry specifically mentioned defense, specifically mentioned edge rushers and linebackers, tells you everything you need to know about where this team thinks they need help. Last season's playoff loss exposed some real weaknesses, and Dallas is determined not to let those same issues derail them again. Whether it's Maxx Crosby or Josh Sweat or someone we haven't even mentioned yet, the Cowboys are hunting for that defensive game-changer who can put them over the top. And honestly, it's about time. For years we've watched Dallas be conservative at the trade deadline, standing pat while other contenders went out and got better. This feels different. This feels like a franchise that's finally ready to be aggressive, to be bold, to actually match their Super Bowl aspirations with Super Bowl actions. Cowboys Nation, this is the kind of news that should have you excited. This is the kind of approach that wins championships. We're not talking about a team that's content to just make the playoffs and hope for the best. We're talking about a team that recognizes its window and is ready to do whatever it takes to capitalize on it. So buckle up, because this season could look very different by the time we hit November. Keep your eyes on the trade market. Keep your eyes on these names we've discussed. And most importantly, keep believing that this could finally be the year Dallas puts it all together. Make sure you're subscribed, because we'll be tracking every development, every rumor, and every move as it happens. Drop a comment and let me know who you want to see the Cowboys trade for. Is it Maxx Crosby? Is it someone else? What would you be willing to give up to land an impact defender? This is going to be one wild ride, and we're here for every second of it. Cowboys Nation, let's get it.